Jazzcast Pros.
Hello, and welcome back to High Vibe Table Talks. This is your host, Rashawn Hargrave, and this episode is a question I've gotten quite a few times and have thought a lot about. In this episode, I'm going to discuss the things that I learned when I went from having my business as a side hustle to going full-time. We're going to talk about what I thought the transition was going to be like, the devastating realizations I had once I actually did it, and then what I did to get through those and what I've learned in the almost year since then. So if you're thinking about going full-time or you're in that transition period, this episode is for you, so keep on listening. If you're a woman contemplating your next move, you've found the perfect podcast to empower your self-growth journey. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the cautiously ambitious woman, remove mental barriers and take action now so that you can achieve your high vibe desires. I'm Rashawn, your high vibe curator, cheerleader, and accountability partner. With High Vibe Table Talks, we tackle the mental barriers and blocks that are preventing you from taking the next steps towards your high vibe. Subscribe to High Vibe Table Talks podcast on the Jazzcast Pros Network. It's high time you activated your high vibes. When I think about going full-time in my business, I have a couple of core memories that I think about. The first is when I first decided to go full-time into my business, when I made that decision. My second one is when I told my husband that I would be putting in my notice at work. The day that I did put in my notice at work, and the day that the glitter of going full-time wore off. My last day at my previous job was December 1st, 2022. I was so excited. Actually, the day that I told my employer was the day of my sister's wedding, and so after I left my meeting, I got to go and celebrate with my sister and my family, and it was a really lovely weekend. My first day of going full-time in my business, I was so excited. I could not wait to have all of the time and the opportunity to pour everything, all of my attention, all of my energy, everything into High Vibe. Just how glamorous it was going to be. I had been running my business for about 2 years, so I had this vision in my head of what it was going to be like, what I was going to do. All of the things that I was finally going to get to accomplish because I had all this time back, and how quickly and exponentially my business was going to grow. I kept hearing that you need to take the leap, how once you truly decide to run your business full time, it's like magic and it's just going to grow. And that's the stake in the ground. That's going to be the difference maker. I felt like I was Dorothy walking into Emerald City, and everything is so beautiful and vibrant. And I felt like I was in Emerald City for the month of December. I was just like soaking it all in and just kind of living on this high. January 2nd of 2023, I felt like I looked behind the curtain. And I remember vividly saying to myself, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to run a business. And of course, I started to spiral because that is what one does. And I was able to sit back and ponder on that for a bit. My dad is an entrepreneur. I had spoken with him at length for many, many months and years about being an entrepreneur, about what it looked like, what his schedule looked like. And while that was very helpful, I always say that entrepreneurship is a cycle. And so I think that the initial part is ideation. So you have an idea and you start to play with it and you start to figure out what works and what you enjoy about it, what you dislike, who your ideal client is. And once you really hone in on that, then you go to growth phase. You have found paying clients, and so you're growing your business and you're really getting more into what you like about it, and you're wearing all the hats and you're doing all the things, and that's the phase that I'm in right now. Then you go to scale phase, where you start to delegate, you start to release, you really hone in on what your zone of genius is, and then you go to mastermind. At the mastermind level, you can really step back from your business for a month, and not much will change because you have put all the pieces in place. I was talking to him about what his schedule looked like, what his day-to-day, his week-to-week looked like, and he's in the mastermind level, and I'm in the growth phase. And so you're kind of comparing apples and oranges. And while I did glean a lot off of that, I am an entrepreneur today because of my dad. And the support system that he has been for me. So I will never take that away. That being said, I had an unrealistic vision of what my schedule looked like talking to someone who is in mastermind phase when I was still in growth phase. As I sat and thought about it, I realized that my biggest struggle was in the transition. When I was running my business as a side hustle, in the limited time I had to do things, especially with the amount of time that running 2 Pilates studios did take up, I was able to do the fun stuff. I was able to fill up the limited amount of time that I had with the fun parts of business. Was I moving the needle forward? Yes, I definitely really honed in on who my ideal client was, what I enjoyed doing about it, and really honed my craft of facilitation. But ultimately, I was creating content for Instagram, putting together presentations, making things fun and pretty. I was selling sometimes. There was no deep urgency to selling. And when I stepped back and thought about all of the departments that make up true businesses, and I looked at it from the lens of when I worked for a software company, what are the departments that made up that company? These are things like sales, marketing, HR, operations, billing. Yes, they have some overlap, and the size of them depends on the size of the company, but they definitely all work together to make sure the company is running well. And while obviously I'm not going to go and hire or outsource a bunch of those things, I needed to have dedicated time to each of those, at least on a weekly basis. When I was running it as a side hustle, it was easy to say to myself, I don't have time for that. I'll get to that eventually. And it was very confronting to have time to do all of these things, but I kept putting them off because they weren't fun. I didn't know how to. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. When I was in sales for the software company, I knew what I needed to do on a daily basis. I didn't have to come up with those things. Here are your tasks. You know what you need to do. Go and do them. So coming to this conclusion, I realized that I needed to schedule out my week very intentionally. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about big picture things that I do during the week that help me step back from the business. I think it's my going from worker bee into queen bee episode. In that, I talk about big picture stuff, working on my business, not in my business. This is the time where I needed to think about how can I work in my business to truly move the needle forward. So what did that look like for me? I wrote out all of the departments. So I wrote out sales, marketing, HR, billing, operations. And I then wrote out what tasks that I do fall into each of those. I also wrote out things that are important to me outside of my business because I want to run my business as my whole self and make sure that things that are important to me stay in there. I like to be done with work, most of my work by 3 p.m., so I get my daughter off the bus and then we have quality time to do things together. We are also a busy sports family and I like to cook. I like to just be really engaged in my household after that time. And like I said, then I wrote out what activities fall into each department. So how are bills being paid? How are meetings getting scheduled? What are my sales activities? What is my sales funnel? What do each of those look like? And how do I show up to each of those? And I really honed in on every part of my business that I was spending time in. Am I billing every week? No. Should I spend time on a weekly basis understanding my budget, what's coming in, what's going out? Yeah. Thinking about all the categories, how did I do in each of those last week? How can I do better this week? How can I improve upon the things that I don't think I did well? How can I take lessons from last week and take them into my schedule this week? One of the other realizations that I had is that I was trying to create and execute at the same time. And I'll give you an example of that, both outside of entrepreneurship and inside of entrepreneurship. A couple of years ago, I took a writing course. Shout out Julia Rose Writes. She's an amazing writing coach. And I really think that walking through that course with her changed the trajectory of where I am today. One of the things that we talked about in that, and I also heard it in Stephen King's book on writing, is that it takes two different brain spaces to write and to edit. And one of the biggest downfalls that writers have is trying to write and edit like as they go. You have to get it all out there, let the creative part of your brain just like get it all out, and then you have to go back and edit. And an entrepreneurship example is I was trying to both create a sales plan and execute it during my dedicated sales time. This is ultimately setting myself up for failure. Another example is trying to create social media and put it out there or put it in Planoly or something like that all at the same time. They are two different energies. They're two different experiences. They're two different parts of your brain. There is a reason why as companies grow, roles get siloed. I was trying to do both at the same time, and I was spinning out of control. And of course, I felt like a failure and I felt like I wasn't executing well, which I wasn't.
Hi, I'm Kelly.
And I'm Kelly,
the host of Getting Real with Bossy, the real, raw, and honest podcast about small business ownership.
We created Bossy to be a safe place to ask the hard questions and to get support that's necessary.
With our experience, 9 businesses and over 25 years, we continue to bear it all and share what we wish we had known.
We move past the must be nices and start getting real. Come along as we interview small business owners and get the true story.
Leave with another tool for the next time you feel alone on this journey.
Business ownership leads to unexpected knowledge. What are you an expert at?
Tell us at Getting Real with Bossy and subscribe today.
Are you ready to put your dreams on the front burner? Come take a seat at the High Vibe Masterminds. A Harvard study shows that you are 95% more likely to achieve your goals when surrounded by others going after their goals. In 1 hour a week, you'll see real transformation through support, accountability, and inspiration. Learn more at highvibecowork.com, and remember, big dreams and small steps can transform your life. As I was setting up my calendar, once I realized that, I set up time for sales ideating or creation and then sales execution. In the sales ideating or creation, I'm thinking about where does my ideal client live? What do they look like? Where do they hang out? Flushing out how I want my prospecting emails to look and sound and kind of editing in there. What would a good sales call script be? The execution is the outreach. I have spent time thinking about what I want to do. Now I'm going to go and do it. It's the doing. It's the checking the boxes off. It's the dotting the I's and crossing the T's. They are very different energies, very different headspaces. They need their own time in the schedule. I even currently put myself in different physical spaces and surround myself with different things when I'm doing both of those. So for the more creative, I have a whiteboard, I have dry erase marker, I have lots of paper, I have lots of tools to write things out, I have big spaces. I also just hung up by my desk a paint by numbers in my office to give myself space to move my hands if my brain needs to process some things. My hands can be moving while my brain is processing either consciously or subconsciously. When I'm in execution phase, when I'm dotting the I's and crossing the T's, I am cozy. I have a nice cup of coffee. Sometimes I'm on my couch and I'm watching a movie that I've seen a bunch of times. But I create a space that feels good to be in because executing cold calls or email cadences or lead generation isn't the most fun and high vibe and jazzy. So I need to create an environment that I want to be in to get that stuff done. As you can see from both of those, just in the environment that I put myself in, I can't do both of those. Just like picture me like painting by numbers and then jumping on my couch and like there's so much sludge even from getting from one physical environment to the other. Your brain has to do the same thing. So I set up my physical space to match the mental space and then create dedicated time around both of those. Of course I'm going to fail if I'm trying to do both of those at the same time. One of the other things that I do when I'm in content creation mode, whether it's coming up with the emails or coming up with Instagram content or LinkedIn content or my newsletter, I listen to lyricless music. So I have a playlist that is just for writing. There's no lyrics. I am occupying my brain and like have that background noise, which my brain needs, but I'm not getting distracted by any of the lyrics, and my brain can focus on the words that I'm trying to create, not what's there. When I'm in execution mode, I have a Hype Me Up playlist. It has songs that like get me excited to, kind of like a running playlist. Like, okay, I'm going to like get myself jazzed up. It's all of those little things that I've learned along the way that set up how my brain works, how I best perform for each of these activities, and the space that I need to be in physically and mentally to get these things done. I reduce the friction as much as I can. That's a phrase that is used in Atomic Habits that I really, really like. If you want to do more of something, you have to reduce the friction. So I know I need to sell. So I reduce the friction that is created between me and doing the thing of selling. If you want to do less of something, you increase the friction. So I want to be on social media less unless I'm super intentional about that time. So I put timers on them, or I only download the app in the hours that I need to, or, just increase the friction that it's going to take for you to access that thing you want to do less. So I say all of this to say, if you are thinking about planning on going full-time into your business in the near future, or are in it right now, there's going to be bumps in the road. It's not all the Emerald City. I hope that this feels like a bit of a look behind the curtain. It was a much bigger transition than I realized, and I felt like I had thought about it, planned for it, done a lot around it leading up to it. I mean, I had been thinking about it for a year at least, even from the time I gave my company my notice, and my last day was 5 weeks. So it wasn't a short transition, and I still felt like I was like, what did I just do? And I want to share that because when this happened to me, I felt like such a failure. I wanted to give up. My head was flooded with thoughts of, I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I am not enough, which is one of my brain's favorite things to play. Why did I think this was a good idea? I need to go back and get a stable job. Who did I think I was? We're going to lose the house. Like, spiraling is something that my brain does really, really well. And so if you're in that, I want to share the words of Marie Forleo. Everything is figure outable. This is too. If this phase doesn't happen to you, amazing, amazing. Maybe you jumped into business a little too late because you planned for everything. But if this doesn't happen to you, amazing. If you are in the transition phase and this does happen to you, I want you to know that it is normal. It happens and you are enough. You will figure this out. If someone came to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about going in full-time into my business, tell me about it, I would share these lowlights that happened when I went from side hustler to full-time. And not to scare anybody away, just to give a realistic expectation that there is glitter and glamour on the other side. It may just not happen off the bat. I have had amazing things happen since going full-time. I mean, I couldn't be doing this podcast if I was full-time. And so there are amazing things that happen, and there are bumps in the road, and there are parts that you did not see coming. It's a big undertaking. So anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, I think, can do it. Being an entrepreneur is also very confronting. There are so many lessons that I learned about myself when I started a business, went full-time in a business, grew a business, and I'm still learning so much. And it's all connected. Like, one of the things that I realized when I was at my last job is that everything felt so urgent. And I think I've talked about this on this podcast before, but everything felt so urgent. Like, I could never feel truly relaxed because I was just kind of waiting for when the next fire is going to happen. And as I'm building my business right now, and I really want to talk more about this, but I'm building a business that has little urgency. Emails can sit in my inbox for 24, 48, 72 hours, and things will not fall apart. Yes, I have deadlines. Yes, I have people who expect things from me, but the world is not going to crumble. if an email sits in my inbox for a couple of days, if DMs don't get answered. I know when my deadlines are for the podcast. And so it's not like, oh my gosh, I need this. It's like it happens in the space that it needs to happen. And so going through that experience at my last job also showed me the type of business that I want to build. And so if you're thinking about transitioning, if you're thinking about going full time, I would think about that too. Like, what are the things that you're currently doing in your current role that you want to be a foundational building block of your business? What are things that you do not want to be a part of your business, of your life as an entrepreneur? And they may not happen right away. They may just be a someday desire, but it's a really good time to just think about that. And think about all of the hats that you're going to wear. What does that look like? You won't figure it all out before you jump in. Like I said, if it's a smooth transition for you, you may have waited a little bit too long. That perfectionism may have gotten a hold of you a little bit. But I think the key is to stay curious. What does jazz you up? What does make you feel comfy and cozy? What gets you motivated? What gets you creative? Do you need time blocking? Do you need community? Do you need an accountability buddy? Do you need to outsource? You've never done this before. How are you supposed to know? So get curious around what ways you have stumbled in the past, what ways you did stumble, which ways you thrive, and how you can best support yourself, your business, your brain, your baby in better ways on your path to success, because success is coming. I truly think that. As I said, entrepreneurship is so confronting, so be prepared for that. And always remember, because this is what past Mershawn needed a lot. You are enough. You are enough. If you're thinking through what you do need and community is something that you need for your goals or taking that next step or to build your business, High Vibe has a seat for you. So visit highvibecowork.com or send me a message on Instagram and we can chat. Because remember, big dreams and small steps will transform your life. If you did enjoy this episode, make sure you subscribe to High Vibe Table Talks, and we will see you all next week because it's high time you go after your high vibe.